In the heart of the city, amidst the steel and glass giants, lay an empty lot. A scar on the urban landscape, a void where something once stood. To most, it was just a patch of dirt and weeds, a forgotten space between a laundromat and a bustling cafe. But to me, Kalen, a narrative archaeologist, it was a dig site. Not for bones or relics, but for something far more ephemeral, far more powerful: stories. My tools weren't shovels and brushes. They were my senses, my intuition, and innate ability to see the echoes of what was. Every place, every object hums with a narrative. Most are faint whispers, background noise in the cacophony of life, but some are buried deep, waiting for someone to listen. This lot, I knew, held a particularly potent one. The air here was thick with a feeling of loss, of something constructed and then painstakingly deconstructed. For days, I had sifted through the psychic soil of this place, searching for the core narrative, the foundational story that gave this void its shape. And then I found it. It wasn't written in a book or carved in stone. It was a resonance, a feeling that bloomed in my mind like a time-lapse flower. I called it the Architect's Lament. The story belonged to a man named Elias Vance, an architect who lived and died over a century ago. But Elias didn't build with brick and mortar. He built with memories. He was a master craftsman of the mind, a man who could take a fleeting moment, the taste of his mother's soup, the warmth of his first love's hand, the sound of his father's laughter, and construct a room around it. His early creations were simple. A small study built from the memory of reading by the fire on a winter's night. A sun-drenched porch constructed from a single perfect summer afternoon. He would spend hours, sometimes days, inside these memory rooms, reliving the moments that had defined him. He believed that as long as he had a room for a memory, it could never truly be lost. As he grew older, his projects became more ambitious. He built entire houses from the memories of his life. A sprawling mansion held his vibrant youth, its grand ballroom echoing with the music of forgotten parties. A quiet cottage by a non-existent sea contained the peaceful solitude of his middle years. He walked through the hallways of his past, a lonely king in a kingdom of his own making. But memory is a treacherous material. It warps, it fades. Cracks began to appear in his creations. A hallway built from the memory of his wedding day would suddenly lead to a room of bitter argument. The garden where he played as a child became overgrown with the thorns of adult regret. He patched the walls, mended the roofs, but the decay was relentless. He was losing his past, room by room. And then there were the memories he actively tried to forget. The painful ones, the shameful ones. He tore down those rooms, brick by psychic brick, hoping to erase the events they contained. He cast the memory of his brother's betrayal into a void, dismantled the chamber of his greatest failure, and burned the nursery that held the unbearable silence after his first child's death. He thought he had cleansed his internal landscape, leaving only the pleasant, the beautiful, the good. But in doing so, he had created gaps, empty lots in the city of his soul. He found himself wandering through his memory palaces, feeling a profound sense of incompleteness, haunted by doors that led nowhere and hallways that ended abruptly. The ghosts of the forgotten rooms were more present in their absence than they had ever been in their existence. In his final days, Elias embarked on his last desperate project. He decided to build one final home. This house wouldn't be a curated collection of his best moments. It would be a house of everything. He gathered the rubble of the rooms he'd demolished, the dust of the memories he'd tried to erase. He unburied every forgotten hurt, every mistake, every moment of shame, and he built. He built a room for the argument, a room for the failure, a room for the silence. He built a house not of perfect memories, but of the complete, fractured, and messy truth of his life. And in the very center of this final, sprawling, chaotic structure, he found a room he didn't remember building at all. It was a small, empty room. And in that emptiness, he finally found a space not to relive the past, but to simply be present. The Architect's Lament was a story about the danger of forgetting, the hollow victory of burying the past. It was a parable about how the foundations of who we are built just as much from the things we lose as the things we keep. As the last echoes of the architect's story faded in my mind, the empty lot before me began to shimmer. The afternoon sun seemed to bend around a point in the center of the patch of dirt. The air grew thick, solidifying. Dust motes danced and coalesced, weaving themselves together like threads on an impossible loom. Wood grain materialized from nothingness, a dark, rich mahogany, scarred and familiar. A tarnished brass doorknob flickered into existence, catching the light. Before me, standing impossibly in the middle of the empty lot, was a door. A door I knew, a door I had tried to forget for 10 years. My breath caught in my throat. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic prisoner. It was the door to my daughter's playroom. My hands trembled as I reached out, my fingers tracing the familiar scratches near the bottom where our puppy used to paw at the wood. It felt real, solid. I turned the knob. It was cool to the touch, heavy. The latch clicked with a sound that echoed not in the empty lot, but in the deepest, most sealed-off chamber of my own memory. I pushed the door open. It wasn't the sun-drenched lot that lay beyond the frame. It was the room. Her room. The pale yellow walls, the small wooden table and 2 chairs. And on the floor, scattered crayons and a single sheet of paper. It was the room where my daughter, Alara, drew her last picture. The vibrant, chaotic, beautiful swirl of colors that she had proudly presented to me just hours before the fever took her. It was the picture I couldn't bear to look at. The picture I had thrown into the fireplace after her funeral, watching the flames consume the last piece of her vibrant life, trying to burn the memory from my own mind. And there it was. Lying on the floor, untouched by ash, unmarred by flame, exactly as it had been a decade ago. But as I stared, my blood running cold, something impossible happened. A red crayon lying beside the paper lifted into the air. It hovered for a moment, then moved to the page. And with a faint scratching sound, it began to draw a line. Backwards. The story isn't over. It's unwriting itself. Chapter 9, The Picture Draws Itself Backwards, is coming. What happens when the narrative you tried to destroy begins to reconstruct itself before your very eyes? Don't miss it. Subscribe to the Tale Prism and hit that notification bell. New chapters drop every day at 2 p.m. Eastern. Reconstruct yourself before the story reconstructs you.